Hello everyone. The topic that I chose for my report is Lesson 1, the communication. So what is communication? Communication is a transfer of information, thoughts, or ideas to create shared understanding between the sender and the receiver. For example, what we are doing right now is communication but with no interaction. So I am the sender and you are the receivers. Communication is a process of concerning exchange of facts or ideas between persons holding different positions in an organization to achieve mutual harmony. It is a two-way process of reaching mutual understanding in which participants not only exchange or encode or decode information, news, ideas, and feelings, but also create and share meaning. In general, communication is as means of connecting people or places. In business, it is a key function of management. An organization cannot operate without communication between levels, departments, and employees. So let's go back sa it is a key function of management. So why do you think it is a key function of management? So to answer that question, communication is considered as key function of management in business kay, as said in here, dili maka-function ng business without communication. Nganuman, kay, ang communication usa na siya ka-factor nganong daghan og successful business. Tungod kay maka-share matag thoughts and ideas, we can create harmonious team. So, with a harmonious team or the team that is united can build a better workplace. So, with a better workplace, the management will be better. So, there are two divisions of communication. First is verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So, what is the difference between verbal communication and non-verbal communication? So, verbal communication is the sharing of information between individuals by using speech. Individuals working within a business need to effectively use verbal communication that employs readily understood spoken words, as well as ensuring that the enunciation, stress, and tone of voice with which the words are expressed is appropriate. So, verbal communication. So, as said here, sa business needs siya og effective verbal communication kanang sakto imong enunciation, ang stress, imong tone of voice kay sometimes if you speak fast, ang tao may misunderstood you that you are nakulbaan or tense, or if you speak in a lower voice pod like kanang with no feelings expressed in the face, you will be questioned as naglagot baka. So, verbal communication in all aspects, not only in business, is very important. So, people may accuse you for being maldita. So, in short, the difference between verbal communication and non-verbal communication, say verbal communication is using speech or you produce sounds. While non-verbal communication, it's obviously not producing any sound. So, moving on, non-verbal communication includes gestures, facial expressions, body positions, known collectively as body language, as well as unspoken understandings, presuppositions, and cultural and environmental conditions that may affect any encounter between people. So, daghan kay ni og under ang non-verbal communication, but the most known non-verbal communication is facial expressions, and it is very often used by everybody. Okay, next. Types of non-verbal communication and body language. First is facial expression. The human face is extremely expressive, able to express countless emotions without saying a word. And unlike some forms of non-verbal communication, facial expressions are universal. The facial expressions for happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, fear, and disgust are same across cultures. So, stated here, the human face is extremely expressive. Yes, I totally agree with that. Just by watching my video, you currently watching my video, you can see that I countlessly change emotions or facial expressions in just a second. So next, body movements and posture. Consider how your perceptions of people are affected by the way they sit, walk, stand, and hold their head. The way you move and carry yourselves communicates a wealth of information to the world. This type of nonverbal communication includes your posture, bearing, stance, and subtle movements. So for example, you are called by your teacher to read a poem in front of the class. And if you're slouching or you look like lazy, so the people around you that will listen to you will feel lazy po at makatakod ang imong body movements or posture sa mga tao nga nagtan-aw nimo. So if you're talking to them while slouching, looking lazy, so obviously ang imong pong makaistorya dukon or gikapoy nga maminaw nimo. Gestures. Gestures are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. We wave, point, beckon, and use our hands when we argue or speaking animatedly, expressing ourselves with gestures often without thinking. However, the meaning of gestures can be different across cultures and regions. So it's important to be careful to avoid misinterpretation. So gestures, just like what I'm doing right now, what I'm doing with my hands. So this is called gestures. So I agree with the saying that gestures are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Kaya I believe, unsay gisulti na to sa itong ba, automatic atong kamot na malihok, like what I am trying to do right now. So ang gestures, kay lahi-lahi na siya in every cultures and regions. For example, pointing. Other regions may consider this as rude, but in the Philippines, sometimes we're just pointing in a friend, okay ra, but actually this is rude to other regions. The proper way to address or to point someone is this way. To be more like formal, to avoid misinterpretation, they use their hands to point on you. So next, eye contact. Since the visual sense is dominant for most people, eye contact is an especially important type of nonverbal communication. The way you look at someone communicates many things, including interest, affection, hostility, or attraction. Eye contact is also important in maintaining the flow of conversation and for gauging the other person's interest and response. So, I agree with this one. So, kabantay mo ka na may ka-istorya, and then if maka-look away ka or like mo look down ka while talking to them, you can feel na murag na awkward ang conversation. That's why maintaining eye contact is very important, because sometimes maintaining eye contact with someone with people you talk with is you are telling them that you are interested or you are listening. So sometimes, if we are asked, nanong giganahan ka anak niya nga guy? Sometimes, kaingon sad ka nga, ganahan ko siyang mata. Why? Nanong ganahan ka siyang mata? Because his eyes are expressive. You can see affection, or you are attracted, or you see interest in his eyes. So that's why eye contact is very important. But sometimes, you have to be very careful with eye contact, because ma-misinterpret sa mga tao sayang imong gustong ipaabot with your eyes. So our eyes can be so expressive in so many ways. That's why we have to be careful to avoid misinterpretation. So next, touch. A person can communicate a great deal through touch. Think about the messages given by the following. A weak handshake. So, di ba a weak handshake kay butang talang you are greeted kanang pagdagabot nimo, and getting a weak handshake can feel like di siya ganahan nga na ako diri. A timid tap on the shoulder, a warm bear hug, a reassuring slap on the back, a patronizing pat on the head, and controlling grip on the arm. So, a touch means a lot to a person. Kay sometimes na mga tao nga ang ilang love language is touch, and na ay mga tao nga ganahan lang sila i-communicate through touch. Like for example, before ka mo leave sa house, like beso baron, and then if dili ka mabeso, murag di na siya ganahan na ako. So that's the effect of a touch din. So next, Space. Space. Have you ever felt uncomfortable during a conversation because the other person was standing too close and invading your space? Ako katry na ko ana so many times. We all have a need for physical space, although that need differs depending on the culture, the situation, and the closeness of the relationship. You can use physical space to communicate many different nonverbal messages, including signals of intimacy and affection, aggression, or domination. So, kaning physical space, kay usa ni siya sa way of communicating to different nonverbal messages. Like, for example, if you are standing too close to me, people may think that we have something intimate. But if you are standing away from me, people might just think, na friends, space can speak louder sometimes. Okay, last. Voice is not just what you say, it's how you say it. When we speak, other people read our voices in addition to listening to our words. Things they pay attention to include your timing and pace, how loud you speak, your tone and inflection, and sounds that convey understanding. Think about how someone's tone of voice, for example, can indicate sarcasm, anger, affection, or confidence. Let's go back to when we speak, other people read our voices in addition to listening to our words. To ang voice or our tone of talking, kay dako na siya og kanang murag role sa pag talk to other person. Kay if you are happily speaking, makaingon na imong kaistorya nga, okay, she likes me, she enjoys talking to me. But if you are in grief or kanang naglagot ba karon nag-istorya, of course makaingon ng tao nga di ko rin siya ganahan makikistorya na ako or such. Okay, moving on. Next, let's talk about the models of communication. First, linear model. It is one way to communicate with others. It consists of the sender encoding a message and channeling it to the receiver in the presence of noise. Drawbacks: the linear model assumes that there is a clear-cut beginning and end to communication. It also displays no feedback from the receiver. Example, a letter, email, text messages, or lectures. So basically, in linear model, mag-expect ta og no feedback from the receiver. So linear model, for example, what I am doing right now, so I'm talking to you, and I am actually giving you some informations, but you cannot give me a feedback. So this is considered as an example of linear model. So next, interactive model. It is two linear models stuck on top of each other. The sender channels a message to the receiver, and the receiver becomes the sender and channels a message to the original sender. This model has added feedback, indicates that communication is not a one-way process but a two-way process. So, best example for that is you talking to a friend or to your mother or someone you are close with. So, if you two are exchanging thoughts or ideas or information, that's basically interactive model. Transactional model. It assumes that people are connected through communication. They engage in transaction. Firstly, it recognizes that each of us is a sender or receiver, not merely a sender or a receiver. Secondly, it recognizes that communication affects all parties involved. So communication is fluid or simultaneous. This is how most conversations are like. The transactional model also contains ellipses that symbolize the communication environment, or how you interpret the data that you are given. Where the ellipses meet is the most effective communication area because both communications share the same meaning of the message. For example, talking or listening to your friends. While your friend is talking to you, you are constantly giving them feedback on what you think through your facial expressions. You are talking to me, and yan, naminaw ra ka na ko, magsiya tando. So, that's basically transactional model. You're agreeing to your friend through your facial expressions. So, next. Communication cycle. The first major model for communication came in 1949 by Claudius Shannon and Warren Weaver for Bell Laboratories. The original model was designed to mirror the functioning of radio and telephone technologies. Their initial model consisted of three primary parts: sender, channel, and receiver. The sender was the part of a telephone the person spoke into. The channel was the telephone itself, and the receiver was the part of the phone where one could hear and the other person could hear the other person. So basically, communication cycle, this is where technology takes in. So the sender is ako. For example, we're talking through a phone. So I am the sender and our channel is the telephone and you are the receiver of the information. Communication noise. In any communication model, noise is interference with the decoding of the message sent over a channel by an encoder. There are many examples of noise. Number 1, environmental noise. Noise that physically disrupts communication, such as standing next to loudspeakers at a party, or the noise from a construction site next to a classroom making it difficult to hear the professor. So, currently, nata environmental noise while I'm talking to you, which is the sound sa ako ang electric fan. So, that's our example of environmental noise. So, next, physiological impairment noise. Physical maladies that prevent effective communication, such as actual deafness or blindness, preventing messages from being received as they were intended. Example, kanang naakay ka istorya nga who has kanang weak hearing. Unya, you're trying to tell him something pero dili niya madunggan, na-misinterpret niya ang message kay wala kay niya nadunggan. So that's physiological impairment noise. So next is semantic noise. This is the different interpretations of the meanings of certain words. Like for example, kanang isugo ba karon sa imuhang mama, giingnan ka pamutla ng mga weed diha tubangan sa atua. Pero ang nasa muna kay other weed, but your mom is referring to a weed na kanang mga grass na nanubo nga kanang not exactly weed like marijuana, kanang weed na kanang damo-damo lang nga pataka lag tubo, but ang imong pagsabot kay weed na marijuana. So that's an example of semantic noise. Next, syntactical noise. Mistakes in grammar can disrupt communication, such as abrupt changes in verb tense during a sentence. So this is a very common mistakes among people na kanang dili kay hilig to speak English. Like me, I am very weak in English speaking, so mistakes in grammar, so that's very normal. It's normal, but pwede na siya i-correct. Number 4, organizational noise. Poorly structured communication prevent the receiver from accurate interpretation. For example, unclear and badly stated directions can make the receiver even more lost. So, example na ano yung organizational noise. For example, I am a president of an organization. Unya, gisugo na ko ang vice president nako para ingnon si treasurer nga mag-collect na og money. But si vice president iyang gipasa ni auditor to tell the treasurer. So, unya, ang naabot na message ni treasurer is what's really exact as same sa information na akong gusto maabot sa iya. So, that is an example of organizational noise. Cultural noise. Stereotypical assumptions can cause misunderstandings, such as unintentionally offending a non-Christian person by wishing them a Merry Christmas. Yes, nakatry ko ani Christmas. Ni-greet ko Merry Christmas sa a non-Christian person niya. He took it as offensive, but I said sorry kay wala mo ko kaibaw nga dili siya Christian. So that's an example of cultural noise. So next, psychological noise. Certain attitude can also make communication difficult. For instance, great anger or sadness may cause someone to lose focus in the present moment. So I always say this to my friends na kanang don't decide if you're angry, don't talk if you're angry, because sometimes there are kanang there are decisions na kanang madalas kalagot unya masulti nimo na akay madamay pa sa imong mga manasulti. So that's an example of psychological noise. So that's all for my report. Thank you for listening. Bye.